The lecture hall of the Galactic Interspecies Academy smelled of recycled atmosphere and quiet superiority. 300 cadets from 47 species filled the tiered seats, Velthari with their 6 amber eyes, Krellian serpentines coiled loosely around their posts, bulbous Mognoth scholars floating in their pressurized spheres. Every species in the known concord was represented here. Every species, that is, except one that most of the room considered barely worth the enrollment paperwork. Humans. Commander Zyrex stood at the front of the hall, his crest fanned to full display, a deep indigo that shimmered under the lecture lights. He was a Salvari, elegant, ancient, considered among the finest military minds the Academy had produced in 2 centuries. His record was impeccable. His reputation, absolute. And his opinion of Deathworld species, loudly, frequently, publicly known. Today, he said, his translator clicking precisely, we continue our unit on biological threat assessment. Specifically, the mythology of Deathworlder supremacy. A ripple of soft laughter moved through the hall. A few cadets glanced toward the back row. There, among a cluster of seats that other species had instinctively avoided, sat Mara Ellison. She was small by human standards, lean, dark-haired, with the kind of stillness that animals in dangerous places learned early. She wore the standard gray cadet uniform, and her hands rested flat on her desk. One of those hands bore a mark, a branching scar across her palm and fingers, silver-white against brown skin, like frost etched into bark. She had not tried to hide it. She had not tried to do much of anything, in fact. She had simply arrived on the first day, taken her seat, and begun learning. Commander Zyrex pulled up a holographic display. Diagrams of various species rotated slowly, strength indices, skeletal density charts, neural response times. The Deathworlder myth persists, he said, because it is seductive. The idea that a species shaped by a hostile environment must therefore be superior in a military context. That hardship breeds invincibility. He let the word hang. It does not. He tapped the display. A single species entry expanded, Homo sapiens. Earth origin. Class 4 Deathworld. Humans, for example. Their homeworld registers at the lower end of Class 4 designation. Moderate gravity. Survivable temperatures across most surface zones. Tolerable atmospheric composition. And yet, he paused for effect, they have produced perhaps the most persistent myth of Deathworlder supremacy in modern Concord history. More laughter. One of the Krellian cadets made a sound that translated roughly as overconfident meat. Mara Ellison did not laugh. She did not shift in her seat. She watched Commander Zyrex the way a person watches whether they have learned not to trust. The data is clear, Zyrex continued. Salvari reflex response times exceed human by a factor of 2.3. Velthari bone density renders them structurally superior in high-impact engagements. Mognoth cognitive processing operates simultaneously across 11 parallel neural tracks. Humans, by contrast, operate on a single-threaded consciousness with notoriously poor sensory range. He folded his hands behind his back. What, precisely, is so frightening about them? Silence. Then, from the back of the hall, may I answer that, Commander? Every head turned. Mara Ellison had raised her hand. The scarred one. Zyrex regarded her for a long moment. His crest shifted, not anger, but the particular color of something that expects to be entertained. Cadet Ellison. Please. She stood. She was not tall. She was not visually imposing. When she spoke, her voice was level and unhurried, the way rivers are level and unhurried before they become waterfalls. You're measuring the wrong things, sir. Am I? Yes, sir. She picked up her datapad and walked to the front of the hall without being invited, a small breach of protocol that Zyrex chose, narrowly, not to correct. She pulled up her own display beside his. Reflex response, she said. You're right. Salvari beat us by 2.3. In a controlled lab setting, testing a single stimulus. She overlaid 2 graphs. But human reflex degrades approximately 12% under conditions of extreme fear. Salvari reflex degrades 41%. In actual combat, under actual threat conditions, we close that gap considerably. She looked at Zyrex. Would you like to know why? He said nothing. She took that as permission. Cortisol adrenaline cascade, she said. Humans evolved on a world that wanted to kill us constantly. We developed a biochemical response to mortal fear that does not shut down higher cognition, it enhances it. We get faster when we're terrified. We think more clearly when we're bleeding. Our pain tolerance under stress is, she pulled up another chart, clinically documented as 2 to 4 times our resting baseline, not because we don't feel pain, but because our nervous system has a specific adaptation for overriding it when survival is at stake. The hall was quiet now. A different kind of quiet. Mognoth 11-track cognition, she continued. Impressive. Genuinely. But 11 tracks divide attention. In a complex battlefield that produces processing hesitation at novel inputs, your own Academy data shows Mognoth cadets average a 0.8-second delay when encountering unexpected threat vectors. Humans hyperfocus. We tunnel. Most species consider that a flaw. She tilted her head. We consider it a feature. When a human locks onto a target, everything else stops existing. Commander Zyrex's crest had gone very still. The indigo had shifted, barely perceptibly, towards something cooler. And the scar, said one of the Velthari cadets from the middle tier, unable to stop themselves. What is that? Mara looked down at her hand. She raised it, turned it so the hall could see the branching silver lines running from her palm up across 3 fingers. Lightning strike, she said. Age 14. The pattern is called a Lichtenberg figure. It's caused by the electrical discharge traveling through the capillaries just under the skin. A pause. I survived a direct lightning strike at 14. Walked home afterward. The silence this time was different. Heavier. Humans, she said, don't survive hostile environments because our world made us physically perfect. We survive because our world made us stubborn. We have a psychological adaptation that most species find genuinely difficult to model, because it doesn't appear in controlled studies, it appears when things go wrong. We don't perform well despite fear, exhaustion, pain, and uncertainty. We were built for those conditions. They are our native state. She set down the datapad. You asked what is frightening about humans, Commander. With respect, it's not our reflexes or our bone density. It's that we grew up on a world that tried to end us every single day for 200,000 years, and our response to that was to decide we weren't done yet. She looked at him steadily. We're still not done. Commander Zyrex did not move for a long moment. His crest slowly shifted. The indigo deepened, not the color of condescension this time. Something older. Something that, in Salvari body language, translated approximately as, I see you now. Sit down, Cadet Ellison, he said. She sat. There was no laughter in the hall. Zyrex stood at the front for a moment longer, looking at the display she had built beside his charts, her corrections, laid out in parallel with precise clarity. Then he folded his hands behind his back and addressed the room. We will be revising the structure of this unit, he said. The mythology of Deathworlder supremacy is an unhelpful framing. The correct question is not whether Deathworlders are superior. The correct question is, in what conditions, and by what mechanisms, do different evolutionary pressures produce different forms of advantage? He paused. That is a more interesting question. It will take longer to answer. He did not look at Mara again. He didn't need to. But as the lecture hall began to stir and fill with the sounds of cadets pulling up new notes, A Velthari cadet leaned toward the Krellian beside her and murmured something in their shared frequency. The Krellian's head turned slowly toward the back row. Mara Ellison had already returned to her seat. Her scarred hand rested on her desk, palm up, the Lichtenberg figure catching the light. She was taking notes. She had, as far as anyone could tell, never stopped. In the records of the Galactic Interspecies Academy, Cadet Mara Ellison would go on to graduate first in her class. Commander Zyrex's revised xenobiology curriculum would be adopted Concord-wide within 6 years. He cited, in his acknowledgments, a cadet who understood that the most dangerous thing about a species is not what it looks like at rest, but what it becomes when it has nothing left to lose. He did not name her. He didn't have to. Everyone knew.